Hello and welcome back to the Boxing Social podcast in association with Betfred. Delighted to be joined here today by the Commonwealth cruiserweight champion Chris Billam-Smith. Before we get started, just to remind you that the Boxing Social podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Have to do that because otherwise I get told off. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, mate. I'm very well, thank you. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, mate. Very well. Glad you've made the journey up from Bournemouth today. I thought you were going to be based in Kent, but it shows how much you wanted to be on the Boxing Social podcast that you made the journey all the way from down south.
Absolutely. 2-hour train journey just for you, Rob.
Was that all it was? 2 hours? You told me it was 4.5 hours.
I told you I was joking.
I don't know. Mate, my geography skills outside of, not even London, but like outside of Bedford where I live, and it's only like a section of Bedford, is terrible. So
your maps aren't very good.
I don't even know where Bournemouth is, mate.
You know, on GTA where you used to go to a road and you'd unlock that part of the map. Your maps are terrible. I've unlocked loads of maps, whole of London.
That's not loads of maps.
It's better than your maps anyway.
Oh, yeah,
when it comes to Bournemouth, I might as well be a cab driver down there. For all my days delivering Chinese, mate, I know all the roads.
Maybe that's a potential career for you after you finish boxing.
Yeah.
Cab driver. I was a fighter once.
Yeah. What taxi drivers, they just talk about what they could have been. I'll just tell them what could have been.
No. You'll be ex-world champion by that point.
Yeah, no, but I could have been.
I think
a footballer.
I think Orlando Salido drives, and this is a very weird start to the podcast, but that's absolutely fine. I think Orlando Salido is like an Uber driver. Yeah. I think he drives a cab now, which is strange.
He's got a decent win on his record as well.
He certainly does, over a certain Vasily Lomachenko, the Ukrainian Chris Billam-Smith.
Also known as.
Yeah. But yes, good to see you. I haven't seen you in probably a little while now, since before your last fight, Vasyl Dukar. I was supposed to have breakfast with you the next morning, actually. That's only just popped into my head. And somebody, despite telling me that you were going to go for breakfast the next morning, when I got up and called you, where were you, Chris? Were you at breakfast?
I can't remember, mate.
To be fair, you had a tough fight the night before.
Yeah, done 10 rounds.
You were in the car on the way home with your lovely, wife, Mia. Yeah. I almost called her your fiancée then.
Ooh, she would have been straight on the blower team.
I could have called you girlfriend or your bit on the side or something like that, but she really wouldn't have liked that. Very strange start to the pod. But yes, how are you, mate? Nice to see you.
Yes, very well, mate. Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's been a long time coming. We're slowly getting through the McGuigan's gym lot. So we had, I think the first person that we had from the gym on the podcast was Luke Campbell, originally back in the old podcast. Recently had Lawrence Okoli. Now we've got you. And we're saving Fowler until we get some inbuilt subtitles into the podcast booth. Because otherwise there'll be a lot of people wondering what he's saying. So, but yeah, let's touch on your last fight. I haven't spoke to you since then. We spoke briefly after the fight for a couple of minutes, but I think everybody expected a really hard fight against Vasyl Dukar, and that's what you got.
Yeah, it was a tough night. It was 10 rounds. I felt really comfortable in there, to be honest. I feel like watching it back and listening to the commentary, a lot of people were saying they had it a draw rather than the knockdowns and things, but we felt, me, Shane and Josh Pritchard in the corner felt really comfortable. I didn't really go through the gears as such. Didn't want to, after the 6th round, I put a lot into that round, and he was a tough bloke. There's plenty of things I learned during that round, and looking back and watching that round back and watching the fight back, things I could have done better. But yeah, it was a hugely valuable 10 rounds to my career, and I think that's going to put me in good stead moving forward.
Particularly in the fact that you hadn't boxed really. You boxed Nathan Thorley. Sorry, I got an itchy back. You got boxed Nathan Thorley at Fight Camp, but they only went a couple of rounds. So it must have been good to get those under your belt. Well, when you consider the potential for some big fights this year. Yeah,
obviously I was meant to box in November. And that didn't happen, so it was good to get out, and it's always good to get the rounds under your belt. I don't really believe in ring rust, to be honest. I think, as long as you're doing the work in the gym and your mind's on the job. But still, yeah, it's a good, valuable 10 rounds.
One of the things that came out after the fight that I'm not sure many people knew was your defensive tips from Coach Derek Chisora that were handed over to you. Just tell us a little bit about what Coach Derek had to say about you tightening up your defence.
Yeah, he just said I got hit too much, and I think it's hard to disagree with him on that point. Don't know if he's someone you want to disagree with too much anyway, but no, he was just saying, you can get the old school line across the ring and bob and weave and do lots of stuff with that. Haven't done it, but maybe I should. Camp's sort of just starting now, so I've only been back in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I don't disagree with him. I've got to tighten up my defence. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. But felt comfortable in there throughout. Wasn't hurt at all. So yeah,
we've been waiting for you to box for the British title now for, I don't know, a year. It's got to be around that time, or certainly kind of. It's been moved 2-3 times in the last 9 months or something like that. Frustrating?
Yeah, it is. But obviously, I'm fortunate on the flip side to have even got out, because a lot of people haven't boxed since 2019, and fortunately I've boxed twice, and we're already planning the next one for this summer. So yeah, it's frustrating. It would have been a great fight against Dion Juma. Unfortunately, he got injured, and then couldn't box the second time either because of the first injury. So yeah, unfortunately that wasn't to be. Hopefully I can get it next and fight for the British title next. I'm not sure what the situation is, but I know we're looking at trying to box Tommy McCarthy. He's obviously May the 15th, but then I also saw an interview with him saying that he if he has a good performance, he's going to get a world title shot. So he's going to have to perform well to avoid me, basically. But I think that makes sense for everyone, that fight, where we are in our careers, the actual ability of us both, where we're ranked with governing bodies and everything like that. Unless he just wants to box for a world title and get out, then that's the situation we're in. But for me, I'd absolutely love the Tommy McCarthy fight next.
What ranking does he have? I think he picked up a WBC trinket, I think, not too long ago. I think is he ranked with the WBC?
WBA, WBC and the IBF, I think.
Oh, so that's a potential fight. So he's not ranked with the WBO, so he can't potentially fight Lawrence Okoli or stay with me next?
Maybe it is a WBO and not WBC. Can't remember.
Let's have a look. Because you've got yourself a ranking now, haven't you?
Yeah, I think
You're number 15 with the WBC, unless these are out of date, which is sometimes the case.
That is I was 18 before that last one.
Number 15 with the WBC. He is number 7 with the WBC. You're now number 11 with the WBA, of course, after picking up your very shiny, but definitely not a George Groves world title WBA belt.
You didn't call me WBA Continental Champion at the beginning.
The WBA, here's a good bone of contention, really. Do you? I mean, not to say you don't care about the belts and stuff, but we spoke earlier on the podcast with Paul Zanon about British, European, Commonwealth, kind of the traditional route. You've kind of done both. You're Commonwealth champion. You've boxed for the British title in the past. You're talking about the European title, but
I never boxed for British. Red Bull wasn't for the British.
Was that not for the British? That was for his WBA Continental, wasn't it?
International or
WBA
Intercontinental.
Rather.
One of the three.
Yeah, again, it's a strange setup.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with it? Would you, obviously you're kind of chasing the more traditional route, but if you were able to circumvent that, I mean, we've seen ex-stablemates of yours in Carl Frampton and Josh Taylor not win British titles and kind of move past that and chase world titles, but you seem to be going more down the traditional route. Why is that?
Probably less fast track than them. You look at Josh Taylor, he won a world title in his, what was it, 15th fight? 15th or 16th fight. Was unified in 16 fights, which is pretty impressive. I wasn't as, I don't think my development my career was as quick as them. Maybe that's the case. The British cruiserweight scene is hot at the moment, and we're all very similar levels. So maybe that's why I've been put in for those fights. Obviously, we've got the Commonwealth against Craig Glover, which was one of those 50-50 fight going in. It was. And then same with Richard Riatpour. And then so the fights have been there, and we've been willing to take them. And sometimes, I'm not saying that's the case with Carl and Josh, but sometimes people skip a level because the fights aren't worth the reward. It's the risk versus reward. And then they went on to prove what they proved. They were both unified world champions. So I think sort of fast tracking it towards that, getting up to that level, the money goes up. If you go up to it quicker, the money goes up quicker. The whole brand of who they are goes up a lot quicker as well. So yeah, I think it all depends on the fighter and who's about in that division at the time.
You mentioned kind of not having that same fast track as Carl and Josh in the past. Talk to us about kind of coming from the amateurs into your professional life, really. I mean, your half and half-ish amateur record.
Bit better than that.
Was it?
Was too harsh, mate.
What was it?
Well, I don't know. It's about 75%, I think.
Was it? It's half and half. I think we go back and check it. But anyways, he boxed in Bournemouth. Doesn't matter.
I barely boxed in Bournemouth. There's not a fight.
Yeah, it's a good point, to be fair. Talk to us about going from amateur to professional. I think it's fair to say that you've developed an awful lot in a short space of time as a pro. You're a completely different fighter to where you were when you were an amateur. Talk to us about the early days, being drafted in as a sparring partner for George Groves.
Yeah, I just got a message off Steve Broughton, who used to work for Shane, on Facebook. He actually messaged me first about sparring Conrad Cummings. He thought I was a middleweight and he thought I was a southpaw. And this is like, I don't know, 3-4 months before. And then I was like, he's like, all right, he's like, how heavy are you? I'm like, I'm boxing 91 kilo. He's like, oh, it's a bit heavy. He's like, but you are a southpaw, aren't you? I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, we were friends on Facebook, but we never even spoke. So it's one of them just sort of, knew of each other. And then he messaged me saying, can you come and spar in London tomorrow? And at 12, and I was like, yeah, no worries, send me the address. He goes, yeah, cool, here's the address. You'll be doing 6 rounds with George Groves. And George at the time hadn't announced that he was with Shane, and it was his first spar under Shane. So yeah, that was, everyone, I don't think I've said in enough boxing social interviews how much I'm a George Groves fan. So for me, it was an honour to go up. I went, I said yes before I knew who it was. And then just kept getting invited back, and Shane invited me back to do some work with David as well. He was training David Hay at the time. So that was a great experience. I think that went on for about a year and a bit, year and a couple of months or something like that, before I decided to turn pro. And then I thought, I'd ask Shane to start at the top, work my way down. Thankfully, he said yes. So I was grateful for the opportunities of sparring, and obviously done enough in those sparring sessions to show that he'd be happy to take me on.
What was it like being let's call it what it is, plucked from obscurity a little bit to go and spar? I mean, at the time, George still one of the highest profile fighters in the UK at the time. What was that like for you? I know we'll joke about it, I'm sure, as the podcast goes on, but a big George Groves fan, and being plucked and going to spar, I'd imagine it was quite surreal. Yeah,
it is. It was. I remember after the spar being like, the bell gone. I said stopped and said thanks, George. It's an honour to share the ring with you. Because it was for me, I was just an amateur kid from Bournemouth, never, reached an ABA final, and that was it. And it was a bit mad. I took my brother up, Lee Cutler. He came up with me to the old gym in Battersea, and it was. And Carl was in there training at the time. But it was a surreal experience, and I just kept getting invited back. And every time, I don't think I ever said I couldn't. I think every time I just said yes. I remember getting a text at 6:30 on New Year's Eve, 6:30 in the evening, New Year's Eve. Can you come and spar at 12 tomorrow? I said, yeah, no worries. So I don't drink, thankfully. So I just said to Mia, it was one of our first New Year's together. It would have been our second New Year's together. We were out with our friends. I said, we can see the night in, but we're not going. It's not going to be too late. She was like, "Nah, it's fine." And then I was like, took her up with me. And George didn't like ladies in the gym whilst they're sparring for whatever reason. And then apparently he said to Shane, "Can you ask her to get out the gym?" And then Shane was like, "What? It's New Year's Day, mate. He's brought his missus up. He's come to do you a favour." I thought, we'd go up there, and then we were just sparring at his old gym. Take her shopping in Westfield after, and we walk around there. Thankfully she got to stay and watch. But and now we were at George's house the other week for his birthday party, in the garden. So yeah, it's a been a strange journey, but it's gone from sparring him to becoming friends. So really weird because I can't imagine many boxers have a favourite boxer as a boxer fan and then become friends with them. So for me, yeah, it's a bit surreal. It's still still gets me now. Like when I take a step back and think about it, how strange that whole scenario is. But no, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, George is one of. Sorry, I've got very itchy back. George is one of the fighters who I still kind of have the fan thing going. Obviously, I'm a boxing fan, and you can't help but kind of grow, close or fond of certain fighters. But kind of before I started working in boxing, I was banging the George Groves drum for him in both Carl Froch fights. Don't feel bad about saying that. Carl Froch never done an interview with us, so that's fine. But yeah, that must be such a great feeling. One of the things that I've never asked you, I don't think, is why you started boxing. You are an articulate man. You're very kind of, I don't know, you have a good head on your shoulders. Why did you decide to have somebody try and take it off your shoulders?
Very well put. I was always into sports. As a kid, I was just sport mad. I did every sport under the sun. I mean, I used to play hockey on a Sunday morning, football on a Sunday afternoon. I tried fencing, trampolining, badminton, diving, tennis. I was swimming. Literally any sport. I just love sport. And I remember being at family dues and stuff when I was a kid, and they'd be like, "Oh, what are you gonna do when you're older, Chris?" And I was like, "Professional footballer." Wanted to be a professional footballer, and or just knew I'd always be in sport because I had no passion for anything academic. I wasn't I wasn't a stupid kid or anything. I just never had any passion for it, and I was sort of only ever did things I wanted to do. So when it come to PE, I'd do every PE. I did just cross country team needed a runner. I was terrible at it, but I just jumped on and just done it just because I loved exercise and I loved sport. And then my brother took me boxing a couple of times when I was probably about 12, 13. And I just went and probably done about 5 to 10 sessions max, over the space of 2 to 3 years. Sort of just you go there, do a boxing session, just so the next day at school you can tell your mates you went boxing last night. It seemed really hard. But no, it was. And then I went to college and I met my mate Dean Perkins, and he's one of my best mates now, and he was boxing, and I started training with him after become friendly with him. Started training at Paul Amateur Boxing Club, and then went and watched him fight about 3 months after being in training. I was just sort of training to get fit for under 18s footy. And and then when I watched him and just everyone was there just going, Dino, as he was doing his ring walk. And I remember there was a crowd of probably 20 of us all chanting it. And I remember stopping and thinking, that feeling must be unbelievable, because I had goosebumps for him. And I just thought that atmosphere is just that must be amazing. Just everyone there chanting your name. As a kid, you imagine it in a football stadium in Wembley or whatever. But and I just said, right, next year I want that. On this same show next year. I ended up having my first fight about 10 months later, and then I was on that show. My second fight was on that exact show a year later. So I just wanted to experience that feeling. And then I won my first fight, and just remember walking around the ring like I was, like I was a world champion already, shaking my finger, yes, I've won this, and it was just the best feeling. It was just such an accomplishment. And yeah, I just what I liked about boxing was I played football my whole life, all other sports, a lot of team sports, but it's all on you. And I liked that control, because you could have the best game of your life in football and still lose, and that I'm too much of a control freak, I guess, to allow that. But at least it's on you. So when you lose, you can take responsibility, and if you win, you get the glory. Obviously, you have a team around you, but it's in your control. It's sort of how much you put in, you get out. So that's what I loved about sport. And yeah, I just loved that feeling of just grafting as hard as you could in the amateur gym, and then and getting that hand raise. It was just a feeling that, unless you've experienced it, it's hard to describe, but it's just such a pure elation. So I absolutely fell in love with it very, very, very early on. Never thought it'd be my career even then, but just how it all panned out is just crazy.
Being from Bournemouth, Bournemouth's not a place that's traditionally steeped in boxing history. Does that make it more difficult, do you think, to start with?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, for a start, like, I mean, you used to have like regions in the west, in the amateurs. So you'd have like what we were Western counties. I won 6 Western counties ABA titles. 3 of them I didn't even box for. So like you got a lot of I got a lot of buys in tournaments and stuff, which wasn't any good for me. I didn't want the buys. I wanted to box every round. The first year I got to the ABA final, I boxed every round. But when I won the novice championships and I got a buy to semi-finals because there was no one to box. But I boxed lads that were, obviously boxed their way to get to the semis, and then the lad in the final was in the final the year before. So I felt an accomplishment because I'd beaten someone who I knew was decent. But yeah, it was just that, nothing down there. And then when it comes to pro boxing, Steve Bendel put on the first boxing show. I think it was in about, I can't remember if it's 26 or 36 years. It must have been about 8 years ago now. So yeah, I mean, obviously if you go way back to Freddie Mills, was obviously a world champion. But yeah, I think the first professional boxing show was put on for 26 years was put on by Steve, who I was working for at the time in his gym, and we had a few pros that we were training together, and yeah, so it's not a hotbed. I used to have to travel for sparring, or I remember when I won the novices, I sparred 4 different kids from my gym, and the heaviest kid was 67 kilo. I won the novices at 86, so yeah, it wasn't like a gym full of good sparring partners or anything. I just 2 sessions a week. That's all it was, because it's just not like London where they're open every day or at least 3 times a week. So yeah, a lot of the work I had to put in myself, but I loved it, and yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, it's crazy how we got to the stage I'm at, especially being from Bournemouth, and then turning pro. I was just fortunate to, I guess, accept that friend request on Facebook and say yes to that opportunity. And then it's sort of just by doing that, my whole life sort of not turned around as such, but gone in a direction which I could, I only ever dreamed of. So I'm hugely grateful for Shane and that for getting me in for sparring and obviously taking me on as a fighter too.
Shout out Steve Broughton for thinking you were a 65 kilo southpaw.
Yeah,
great stuff from him. You mentioned there about not wanting, not wanting, but not thinking about it being a profession. You'd have never believed that you would become a professional fighter. What changed? Was there kind of a eureka moment at any point?
No, not really. I think it was when I won the novices. It was sort of like I'd had 14 fights, won 11, and I just thought, right, I just want to see how good I am or how good I can be. I want to go straight in the open class championships after 14 fights, which most people in the open class championships have probably had minimum of 40 fights because they've boxed as juniors and they come all the way through. So I boxed some lad who, to be fair to him, had only had about 15, 16 fights as well, beat him. And then the pre-quarters, I boxed a lad called Marley Churcher, who he'd won Tri-Nations gold and all sorts as a junior. But I think he was, sort of lost his love for the sport, and he was a bit overweight, but he'd had 51 fights, and I'd had 15 at this point. So I was going in absolutely like bricking it, and but I beat him. It was an old point system. I was 18-3 up after the first round, and I was like 30-12 up after the second round. I just put everything into it. Like, it was 3 threes. Third round, I had nothing left. I just absolutely just put everything into this. I think I got a standing 8 count after I caught a hook because the way I took it, I just like slumped against the ropes and everything. So, but no, I beat him, but I broke my hand on his head and didn't realise. And then I said to my coach, "Oh, my hand's aching a bit." He's like, put in ice for 5 minutes because of the quarters of the weekend after, and it just ballooned up. It was huge, and he was like, "You're on the way home," and he was like, "You're not gonna be able to fight." I was like, "No, I beat him with one hand, like, because I knew the kid I was boxing. I was like, I can beat him with one hand, like, I'll just let me do it, because it was my right hand. Obviously, my left hand was my jab and my left hook and all that, so I knew I could, or I thought I could beat him with that. And he was like, but it was all the way up in Great Yarmouth. It's like a 4 or 5 hour drive, and he's like, "Well, drive all that way, and the doctor doesn't even pass you." And I was just like, "Oh, So he's like, look, we've had a good run. You've won the novices this season. You've gone on and been unbeaten in the ABAs at the stage. You know, you got to the quarterfinal. You know, just have the summer off, come back next year, and we'll push on again. So yeah, then that happened, and I think I got to semi-final the year after. I boxed a lad who I was meant to box in the quarters. I boxed him on a club show because I was like, get me that fight. I'm going to prove that I should have been in the semis. Then won that one, and then got to semi-final that year and boxed Leon Juma. I think he'd had about 24 fights and I'd had about 19, and obviously he was tipped to win it, and he beat me in the semi-finals. That's why I was looking forward to getting revenge in the pro ranks. But and then I got a GB assessment off the back of the Leon Juma fight, and I was like, wicked, like, I couldn't believe it at the time. I was just like, why have I even been considered? Like, I didn't win anything. Obviously they get like the semi-finalists in or whatever it was. So yeah, I went for that and didn't get in, and I was like, okay, I can make the GB squad. So the year after, I went in the ABAs and got to the final. Knowing that the international weights was 91 and 81, and I was 86, boxing at 86 at the time. So I was like, right, after this season, the year I got to finals, after I'm going to move up to 91 anyway. Got to the final, had GB assessment, didn't get on. So like, okay, whatever, but I'm going up to 91. Then I had my shoulder injury. And then but I kept fit and healthy throughout that. I just thought all in my head I was like, GB squad, Olympics 2016. Like, injury set me back quite a bit. Obviously I was out of the ring for 18 months, couldn't train for 6 months.
What was that like? I'm assuming at some point, was there ever any moment in there you thought, okay, well maybe this is not for me?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think I looked at all the people who've been injured in sports in general. I mean, I'll tell you what, Anthony Ogogo was sort of in my mind then, because he'd had a similar thing. He'd had a shoulder injury for GB, and then still reached the Olympics, and won a bronze medal, obviously. So I just thought, just look after yourself. And I always used to stop drinking during this amateur season. I'd have a few drinks in the summer. And I think before my shoulder went for the last time, I'd not been drinking for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I was just like, I'm going to see how long I can actually go. And then that happened, and it was like, I'm going to need surgery. And I was like, okay, like, now's the time. Like, I sort of saw it as a test. Like, the reason it's just a test for you. It's, you've got this is basically just like a flip of a coin. Like, if you do that, if you go back to drinking, eating, not looking after yourself or whatever, then that's the chance gone. Like, that's your future gone. I just always had this long-term goal. I just thought, right, this is a test and another reason why you'll make it, because it's someone else has been chucked in your way, another hurdle to overcome. That's how I looked at it, really, just as a challenge to not drink and look after myself. And I stayed within, I think I didn't go up above 95 or 96 kilo. So I looked after my weight. Couldn't really do much exercise-wise at first, because like even running hurt, I had my arm in a sling for 6 weeks, and then started getting back in the gym and doing all I can. I remember doing leg sessions with my arm in a sling, like a leg press machine and all that sort of stuff. And then I just saw it. And then obviously the year after my surgery, and the season after, I got to the ABA final again in 2016. And then I kind of knew, like, in my head I was still thinking Olympics, but it was too, Lawrence was there, he was boxing for GB, and then I just kind of knew I wasn't going to make it. Then I thought, okay, I'll get on GB and go to the Commonwealth and turn pro after that. I didn't get on GB, so I thought, well, I'll turn pro, and I kind of I've always had a good mindset, but I just thought I needed like a real high esteemed coach, highly regarded coach, real good coach, because I believe I'm very coachable, and I think I've proven that since I've turned pro. Obviously, I had 1 knockout in the amateurs, and now I've got 10 as a pro in 13 fights. So I think that's shown how coachable I was, and I knew that having a great coach like Shane, I'd be able to get the best out of me. And so when I turned pro, I asked Shane. When I didn't get on GB, I asked Shane about that, and I was going to ask him the Monday after the Hay Bellew fight. I was actually going to ask him in January, but he was out in America with Frampton, and then he stayed out there for Miami with training David. I was like, okay, I'll ask him after Hay Bellew because I was going in the ABAs in April anyway. I was like, I'll ring him on the Monday, congratulate him, and then David got beat. I was like, I'll leave it another week. So I left it another week, and we're getting closer and closer to the ABAs. And then he said, yeah, we might be able to do something like maybe on a part-time basis, come up and do some more sparring with George, and we'll have a chat. And then he said he was happy to take me on. So I went in the ABAs and boxed Vidal, who we've just seen leave the booth, and he beat me on a split decision. I didn't pull him up on that. I think someone sent me a video of his saying that he beat me unanimously, but
I think I remember you telling me that. Yeah, recently. I should have brought it up.
Someone sent me a video saying this Vidal mentions you, and I was like, yeah, we boxed, and he sent me the clip or something, and but it wasn't Vidal. All right, it was a split decision. You know it. You had a nice bruise on your head, and I had a nice black eye. We had a good war, but no, Vidal's a top lad. But and then I lost to him, and that was it. I was turning pro, so I asked Shane, and thankfully, like I said, he took me on.
What was it about Shane? We've kind of spoken on very surface level stuff about Shane. Obviously, I got come down to the gym, know Shane fairly well, but we've never really spoken in depth about your relationship with him. Are you very close, as often is the case with fighter and trainer? What was it about him that you wanted to pursue initially? Sound like you stalked him a little bit, but.
Definitely didn't stalk him, mate. He was messaging me on Twitter asking for sparring and give me his number. No, you just look at the gym speaks for itself. Like, at the time, obviously, when I asked him, David had just lost a belly, so technically that was their last fight together, but I didn't know that at this point. So you had David Hay, you had George Groves, you had Carl Frampton, you had Josh Taylor, Conrad Cummings was in the gym at the time. I think that was it at that point. But if you look at those names, like Carl was obviously a unified world champion, and it was just a crazy stable. Like, the talent in there was unbelievable. So, like I said, this lad from Bournemouth doesn't really mark up against any of them in there. Not an Olympian. They're all internationals. And they just had bundles of ability in that gym, and I liked the way he'd developed George and got George back from I liked watching George on Adam Booth, and then when he was with Paddy he seemed to slow down a bit. George said on the podcast I did with him, it was good, some of it was good, he praises Paddy, but it was just he just seemed to have lost his snap and his speed. And then after watching George under Shane, he got that speed back, and George, having experienced it, he's got a great jab, and as everyone knows, but experiencing his speed is one of his best attributes. So just the way he developed everyone in the gym and what I'd seen, I really liked it. He was a young coach as well, and he was very up to date with strength conditioning and nutrition and stuff like that, which I know quite a bit about myself, and I've done a lot of sort of studying just for my own amateur career. So and then I just thought, I've already got a relationship with him. I had no relationship with any other coaches in the UK, so it all made sense, and I think now it's been worth it for all of us. And now me and Shane we're really good mates. We speak on the weekends and stuff now and again, not so much anymore. But we spent a lot of time together. Obviously lived at his for a bit, and they've had the whole family's had a horrific few years, obviously with the loss of Nika and stuff. So it's nice to have been there for him as much as I can. Not having experienced anything of the sort myself, but no, he's needed people there, and I've just tried to be here as much as I can. And same for him with me. Like, in any situations, he's always there for me at the end of the phone. So yeah, we're really close.
I think because Shane, I wouldn't say guarded necessarily, but sometimes it's something like that, particularly when doing media, and a lot of boxing fans will only see fighters or trainers when they're doing media. I think people can sometimes get the wrong impression of him. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. But that's Shane likes that. That's Shane. He's got a heart of gold. You know, he's he is a bit of a romantic in situations like as well. But yeah, he people sort of, he doesn't give too much away. He's quite a closed book unless you know him, which obviously you do. But he's people definitely get the wrong end of the stick with Shane. But we have a great laugh in the gym, and I think that's something which makes him a good coach, because we all have good relationships with Shane, and he's able to adapt that adaptiveness of different personalities and all that sort of thing, and his banter and stuff in the gym, which is sometimes it's some people walk in and might feel a bit harsh when he's he just puts you in your place, which is where boxers half the time a lot of boxers need to keep their feet grounded and get pulled down, and there's no chance of anyone losing their head or getting too big for their boots in our gym. And I think that's something that we all like and respect about Shane as our coach.
What was it like living with him?
Yeah, it was, we had a good laugh. A lot of PGA. Was it Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy? I think it was at the time. We were playing PGA golf on his PlayStation. Me, him, and Josh Pritchard. But no, it was. I was there obviously Monday to Friday. Yeah, it was good. We'd travel into the gym together and stuff. Obviously, later on we lived around the corner from the gym. Yeah, it was just watching TV. It's just like I guess it was almost like a lad's pad at one point, in the sense of it was just us in there. After he'd split, but yeah, it was funny. It was a good laugh, and it was times that I really cherish, actually. Like, looking back early on in my pro career, I was obviously staying with Shane a lot of the time. But we had a good laugh. Me used to go down the driving range together, and they'd give me as many tips as I needed, which is a huge amount, because they're all great at golf.
Yeah.
Like Shane, his brother Jake, and Pritchard's decent as well. And I'm definitely not a golfer, but they said I had a good swing eventually, so I'll take that. And that's probably what I'd leave in my golf bio and not actually show anyone. But no, it was a great laugh living with Shane, and continues to be a great working relationship.
You're the longest. Pritchard's the longest serving member of the team, but you're the longest serving active fighter. I mean, the nature of boxing means it's always a revolving door, somewhat depending on which gym you go to. But it's quite often that fighters come and go, fighters retire. Does that impact you at all? Does that affect you at all? Kind of being the longest serving member of the team? No,
not really. If it means I'm meant to be the next one out, then boys are going to be going for a while, because I can't see anyone else coaching me for the rest of my career. I remember early on, things were going on, and Shane's always said, like, I'll always be in your corner, and I think I'd said this sort of, never want anyone else in his corner, in my corner. How we've progressed as a working relationship, we really understand the sport together. He knows that I understand where I'm going wrong now, so it doesn't take a lot. It's not hard where he's trying to teach me something I just don't get it, because of my sporting background. Like, I know how the body works, the biomechanics of it all, where of what I've got to do with what part of my body, and I think that helps us both, because we've both got that sort of S&C background and personal training background of knowing the body and what it's got to do and where and what and how, and that benefits our relationship, because our working relationship, because if I'm doubting something, I'll go, what about this? And he'll go, yeah, or and we can adapt really quickly. And I think that's helped my progression, having that know-how between us, but also just having Shane knowing everything he knows, and me being able to take on board, like I said earlier, being coachable. But yeah, it's a great relationship. Like I said, I wouldn't want anyone else training me. So yeah, I can't see me ever leaving. Shane might end up sacking me, but I'd like not to like to think he wouldn't. But yeah, it's I don't think he would. But no, we've got a great relationship, and long may it continue.
So that's Shane. Somebody else I'm keen to speak to you about is Barry. Of course, Hall of Famer Barry McGuigan, Irish boxing legend, indeed, boxing legend just in general. Explain to me the benefit of having somebody like him, being able to pick and take bits of knowledge and advice from Barry.
Yeah, obviously Barry gets a lot of stick in the boxing world for recent things, but I've absolutely zero complaints and only great words to say about Barry. He's there every sparring session, if not just training sessions like we were in last week. We're not sparring. He's just there watching us on the pads. He used to travel down to Bournemouth and watch me, blow a guy out and around, and then travel home again. And it's like he's doing all that travelling. He's not, and at that stage, he's not getting anything for it. Like you're fighting for whatever. Like early on, you're fighting for like $1,500 or whatever max, and he's travelling all that way. He's not taking anything from me, and he's travelled down to watch me, and he's there and with intent, and that's always, he's not just there because he has to be there, because he wouldn't. He's there and he's in the changing room and he's telling me to do this, and he's keep making sure I'm on my game and all those sort of things. But yeah, he's just he's a great bloke to have around, and always in the gym, and he's very knowledgeable in the sport and the business side of things. And it's been great to have him as my manager. And yeah, he's, like I said, I can't speak highly enough of Barry. He's done a huge amount for me. Very caring and loving bloke, very family orientated man, and it's a great family as a whole. And yeah, they as all of them have done a lot for me, and it's been really honoured to have them as my team.
He's very passionate still, even after all of the years, and boxing has a way of kind of beating people down and making people, embittered and what have you. Obviously mentioned kind of recent years, the issues that he's had with Carl, which obviously has nothing to do with you, so we're not going to go into, but the issues that he's had with Carl over the last few years, but still the fact that he is so vibrant and so passionate. I mean, I had the unfortunate position of sitting next to him for your last fight. Can you hear him when you're in the ring, when he's shouting and screaming and all of that stuff, or do you block it out on Fight Night? I guess it's more difficult now there's no crowds.
Yeah, no, you can definitely hear him. He's and he says some great things. He's so passionate. He's like I don't mean this to sound patronising, but he's almost like an excited kid, because he sometimes doesn't even know what he's saying. But that's just his passion, and that's what you absolutely love about him. He's just so passionate for the sport and for you to do well, and for me to do well. So Shane's quite cool and calm, collective in the corner, and knows the job. But Barry's there, and he'd be a nightmare to have in the corner, because he'd just get you too wired. You'd be like, yeah. He'd be sat there like a panting dog. But no, he's so good to have, at ringside, shouting all the advice and things like that. And I think Shane sometimes has to tell him to, no, quieten down. We don't want him to do that or whatever, because that's not the thing that Shane wants me to do that round or whatever it may be. But no, he's you've had that experience firsthand, mate. So no, it's wicked to have him there, and having someone so highly regarded in the boxing world. I've been lucky enough to travel around the world with him in Philadelphia, and we're over in Belfast, and everywhere you go, people know him. And it's funny because you see people like in their 40s and 50s, chuck their kids in front next to Barry to take a picture. The kid doesn't have a clue who he is, because why would they? They're like 7-8 years old, and then. Yeah, and but the passion people have for Barry is huge, and the respect they have for him is huge. So it's great to have him there at ringside, shouting and screaming.
Yeah, I remember walking down. I think one of the first times I was walking around in public with Barry, I think it was in Glasgow for a Josh Taylor fight. We were probably going to Via Italia, walking down the street with him, and he gets stopped literally every 2 meters in pretty much every city that you're in. If he's walking around in public, and you do stop and think, oh yeah, you're really fucking famous. It creeps up on you a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I've been even go to America, and you see like famous boxers like out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but that will be like, Barry, like they're like massive fans of him. I'm like, what? Like, you're a fan of this person, and this person's a fan of Barry, and that just goes to show how highly regarded he is in the boxing world, and everyone knows what he's done for the sport, and did for the whole of Ireland and everything. And it's a real special story, and it's a massive part of history, because you're never going to get the figures he used to get nowadays, because of it's much more diluted. There's a lot more channels nowadays. When there was 4 channels back in those days, you got 18 to 20 million watching him. It's just crazy to think of that, and just, yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter who it is, but people absolutely love Barry.
With fighters leaving the gym, is it difficult to maintain a relationship with them? Obviously, fighters have left the gym under different circumstances for different reasons over the last few years. Is it difficult to continue those relationships?
Yeah, I think as well, it's just like the relationships are grown because they're in the gym, and then all of a sudden they're not. I respect everyone that, I don't know what's gone on, the reasons they've left. I have no idea. Obviously, I'm still in the gym. They didn't tell me the reasons they left. Shane doesn't tell me the reasons they left. So for me, it's just a bit of sort of water under the bridge in a sense. I respect them all. I don't wish bad on them. I'd love, for example, Taylor obviously fighting this month or next month. Where are we? We're April. He's in May. I want him to win and smash Ramirez. As a boxing fan, I think as a boxing fan, he's one of the most exciting fighters to watch. But yeah, don't really have, it's not like I speak to him all the time now, or plan to see him and stuff like that, or anything like that. It's just it is what it is. Sport.
Yeah, exactly. It is what it is. But it is
the classic boxing phrase over the last few years for sure. But yeah, it's there's other people in the gym now, and everyone's got their own lives. I've got my mates back home, and when you're away all week, you don't have time to go and see people that you've shared the gym with for 6 months or a year or whatever it was. Because I'm away a week, and I'm home the weekend seeing my family and my nieces and stuff like that now. So yeah, you don't really have much of a relationship at all.
Was it, I don't want to say difficult, but were you wary of Lawrence joining the gym? Obviously, I know you have a good relationship now, and you I saw how happy you were to see him win the world title against Krzysztof Grabatsky, but was there any kind of, I don't want to say concerns or doubts, but something like that about him coming into the gym?
Yeah, for sure. I had, like I said, I was looking at the GB squad like years ago. We were talking 2013, 2014. And he was sort of like, he got on and was number one. So then you're a fighter, and it's about being number one. So he was in my sights then. Then he qualified for the Olympics. I was like, okay, I'm never gonna fight him in the amateur. Well, because 2016 he was in the ABAs. He was seeded number one. I wasn't seeded because I hadn't boxed in 2015, which I was gutted about, because Ricardo Slew won it that year, and I'd beaten him in 2013 semi-final. But yeah, then Lawrence was ranked number one, but then he qualified, so they took him out of the ABAs, understandably. And yeah, so I think then I got pushed up the rankings, like seed 3 or something. So I didn't get to box him then, and then it was like, obviously he's going to Olympics, and it was turning pro. And then eventually I turned pro as well, and it's sort of, he's number one. I think he was fighting Chamberlain when I think I'd had a couple of fights, or maybe 4 or 5 fights. So then, like, he's number one in Britain. So in your head, that's everyone in any division will tell you. They'll look at the number one. So yeah, and then Shane mentioned it, and at first I thought that's a bit strange, like where we're at, because like I said, in my head I built it up like he's my future opponent. He's the
what you're aiming one for.
Yeah. I knew how difficult he was going to be to beat, but in my head I was always training to beat Lawrence. And I think a lot of the British fighters in cruiserweights didn't see how effective he was, because the way they spoke and the way they took those fights on and everything about it, like it's like they just thought, oh no, he's terrible, because he looks like his awkwardness used to look quite novice-y, like when he was learning through his early stages of career, so that everyone just thought they'd walk through him. But I'd sparred him before they got me in to spar him before he went to the Olympics, and we did some good rounds then. But yeah, so in my head it was sort of, he was number one. Then for him to come in the gym, it was like, well, so I had a conversation with Shane. He told me the plan, and sort of we mapped out the next few years. And in all credit to Shane, it's mapped out exactly like that. How we expected it to be. I knew. I'm not saying I was world level when Lawrence joined, and I should be number one in Britain or whatever. But that's obviously what you're aiming for. But then he obviously told me that the mapping out the future for both of us, and I was okay with that, and it's been a massive benefit to me. Me and Shane were only talking about it the other day. He gave me a lift back into London, so I get a train home, and last Thursday, and he said it's been a massive benefit to me. It developed me massively as a fighter. To have that, somebody who's world class as a sparring partner in your own gym is priceless. So I was very fortunate for that, and now I've shared the ring with him, and obviously spent 2 weeks out with Bradis sparring. So for me, they're the best two cruiserweights in the world, and I've managed to share the ring with both of them. So it's a great experience. So having Lawrence in the gym and seeing things he does every day, and just how the world champion lives and trains is invaluable experience. And thankfully, I've always had that in the gym, because there's always been somebody who's a world champion in the gym, or at least about to fight for a world title, or is world class. So we've always just trained like a world champion would, from before my debut. So that is why I think the development's been so good for me. And then, this sort of, I'm learning mentally as well how to deal with it, and physically I'm growing as well now. So I think, it's all been a benefit, and Lawrence joining the gym has been a huge benefit.
That's from kind of the boxing perspective. What about as people? You seem to get on pretty well with Lawrence. You've got a good relationship. He was in here a few weeks back singing your praises as well. You seem to have a good dynamic, which again, like, you wouldn't necessarily, it's not a given when you're both boxing in the same division. Yeah, no, we've learned to get to know each other, and he knows what I'm about, and I know what he's about, and we've got a lot of similar traits. When it comes to wanting to be the best, and you want to be competitive, and that works for both of us, and it drives us both on. But no, he's a good lad. He's got some, he's a real funny guy as well, and I think that didn't used to come across much in his earlier interviews. Maybe that was like sometimes that can be a self-doubt thing. Not that he suffers from self-doubt, because that's something Lawrence Okoli does not lack his confidence. But like where he was in life, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So in his interviews, he didn't really used to show his true personality. And I remember us saying in the gym, like, that's the sort of stuff you want to show on TV, because like he's a real character. And now, obviously, since he won the world title, he's on everything. He's got his book, he's got his song, he's on Good Morning Britain, he's on all those things. So, all credit to him. He deserves all the success. He's put in the work, and his story's an unbelievable story. We get on really well now. Do you like doing interviews?
Yeah, I'm not like, I don't crave them. Like you, I'm not. I like doing it because there was a time where I was just a fan and an amateur boxer, and used to think, how cool would it be to do an interview on
IFL?
Back then, Boxing Social wasn't born, but when Boxing Social was born, obviously Boxing Social. But yeah, like it was like, oh, how cool would it be to do an interview on Sky Sports and all these sort of things, and like, so I try and show the gratitude towards it. I don't dislike doing them at all, but it's not like it's not why I got into the sport for the praise and all that, or maybe it is why I got into the sport, but I still don't think I'm anywhere near, finished. So I'm not like, when some people say certain things, like, especially back home in Bournemouth, where it's not known for boxing, you get a lot of people that, think so highly of me and I'm like, but that's like, yeah, he's Commonwealth champion or whatever. And it's like, I haven't achieved anything yet. Like in my head, I haven't. So for me, like maybe at the end of the career, when I've got plenty of money and all the belts, then I'll feel like worthy of the interviews. But that's how I think I see it now. Like I don't really feel as worthy as other people, or as I see other people who deserve interviews and more hype about them. And that's I think since I won the belt, I felt a little bit more comfortable getting interviewed in the sense of feeling a bit more worthy of it. But it's I don't dislike doing them. I can talk. I can go on and on. But like I said, I've got my own podcast as well. So
second time he's plugged that, by the way.
I've said.
Go on, tell me what it is.
I haven't called it the Perfect Athlete Podcast once yet.
I'm still waiting for my invite.
Available on Perfect Athlete at school, mate.
Mate, there's probably some sports. To be fair, I was going to say...
I've had a darts player on, mate.
Well, I've got the build for a darts player. It's just actually playing darts, I'm not sure would be too good. You must enjoy doing that, though. I have checked out some of it. I haven't watched... I'll watch the George one.
Listen, didn't watch it.
Is it not video?
No.
Mate, why don't you do video? I've seen like the snippets that you put up. I
haven't got the budget you've got, Rob.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe you can rent from our lovely partners here at Webvid. They'll look after you. But yeah, you must really enjoy doing it.
No, I do. I love it. Like I said, sports has been my whole life. So I've had a darts player and I've had a girl I went to college with. She's the second best female polo player in the world, which is a sport I had to learn a lot about before that interview because... yeah, it's mad. They have like 6 horses per player per game. So the horses get really well looked after in the sense of like you don't just have one horse and just
run around forever.
Drag it through the mud. But yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I've had that. I had a AFC Bournemouth player on, professional footballer, which was for me crazy because he's a Premiership footballer. Was obviously now we're in the Championship. Not for much longer though. Getting back up into the Prem, hopefully. But yeah, and I've had my mate who was a marathon runner, ultra endurance runner. He's ran the Tour de France and all sorts. So all these different sports. I've had a breathwork specialist on. So it's things I love it because it's things I'm genuinely interested in. How different athletes tick, how they train, certain things they do where that I might be able to take off them. Little tips here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, it's been really fun, and I'm just working on getting my second series out now. But it's just a passion for me, and I get to pick people's brains about how to be a better athlete, and which is kind of what my job's about.
Okay, I've got a question. How many perfect athletes have you had on who have kicked a football into a basketball hoop in bare feet on the first attempt?
We've been waiting for that one. It was unbelievable. I've had 0. To be fair, the closest was Junior Stanislas, the Bournemouth player. He's a free kick specialist, but I don't reckon he's got that in his locker. Barefoot, flicking his slider off.
So we never got the video for this. So this was going to pay for my house deposit, because in my head I was thinking we've got this video and there's a viral video in there. So can you explain to people, because people won't believe it if I say. So can you explain to people what happened?
Nothing. Oh. No, I'm joking. So we're all in the sports hall down in Kent University with Ryan Elliott was there. Who else there?
Chris Roberts.
Chris Roberts was there, and Josh Pritchard. And we were all trying to kick a football into a basketball hoop. I was there for 40 minutes, and I think they were there for longer. I was there for at least 40, 45 minutes after training, and we were just having a laugh. None of us, I don't think we got close, to be honest. And then you walked in the hall, and you're like, all right, come on, you've done 3 hours of interviews. Like, come on then, let's go home. And then so I think either me or it might have been Ryan had tried to kick it in, it bounced against the wall. And then I said, mate, we've been trying to get this in for ages. It bounced off the wall. You just walked up to it, flicked your slider off, and just pinged this football. I'd say if it was a basketball court, it would have been inside your own half.
Yeah.
And it just went straight in, and we just all went mental. People were dropping to the floor. I picked you up like we just won the World Cup. It was better than winning the World Cup. It was unbelievable. And I'm devastated we haven't got the footage. And do not blame me because, one, I don't have a video camera, but people there, I mean, there was a media guy, there was 2 media people there looking at Ryan over here. And I said, boys, we've got to film this. We need camera rolling because something epic will happen. And when we get it in, we can just say it's first time. But that genuinely was first time. But it's not my fault that there's no footage.
Well, there was CCTV of it.
Yeah, there was. I don't think CCTV would have been great. It would have been good because we would have actually been able to prove it. But I'm not a liar, and that is exactly what happened. And it was epic, mate. But sometimes the best things, are just memories, and that's how they're going to have to live, mate. And that would be a memory I've hoped to, clean up my defence so I can remember that one forever. Start bobbing and weaving a bit more, like Big DC said.
Yeah, don't have too many fights like you did against Vasil Ducar, otherwise you won't be able to remember that in a few years' time. But yeah, it was, probably the greatest thing that I've ever done in my entire life.
Your biggest sporting achievement.
It was pretty good, mate.
It was the biggest sporting event. My favourite sporting event of 2020.
It was pretty good, but I'll never get over the fact that we don't have any proof of it. But that's got to be enough to get on the podcast. Come on.
I don't know if one kick of a football is going to get you on the podcast.
It was an elite kick of the football, though.
It was elite, but I can't stretch that out into a 40-minute episode, mate.
We do like to talk. Right, let's flick through some of your fights that you've had. The Richard Riakporhe fight, I think will always be a pivotal fight for you. Obviously, it didn't go your way. I remember somebody, I won't say who, asking me in the build-up, is that Chris Billam-Smith any good? And I said, ask me again after the fight. Because that was a step up, and we'd seen.
Did they ask you again?
They did ask me again after the fight. I said, "Yeah, well, he's not as good as that Richard Riakporhe." But how pivotal do you think that fight could end up being to your career? I mean, you mentioned after that going and getting the win over Glover, and you boxed in that. A lot of people were billing that as kind of a do or die crossroads because obviously he'd been beat before, and the way that the sport is, you get a couple of losses, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself right to the back of the queue. But you approached that fight, and the confidence that you exuded in that fight, based, I'm assuming, on what you'd gone and done in the Riakporhe fight, was evident to see.
Yeah, I think as well I knew I could have done a lot more in the Campbell fight. I think I sort of kept too what's the word? A bit too one-dimensional in the Richard fight because we thought we were doing enough. So I sort of almost played it a bit too safe, in the sense of like the 9th and 10th round. Obviously, I had a decent 9th, but 10th round I probably could have pressed on a bit more, and even like 8th, 9th, 10th, last 3 rounds, because we thought I was probably 4-2 up at worst after 6 rounds. So and then obviously he won the 7th, had the knockdown, and then I was like, right, I've got to win a couple of rounds here. So yeah, and I felt in the corner that they had me winning. They had me after the fight, they had me 2 or 3 rounds up. So I think. And I felt that as well. It wasn't like, I just listen to them. I felt that as well. So I just sort of, I think because I knew I had more, going into the Glover fight, I could prove I've got more variety. And also stylistically, Craig is quite, he's a big puncher, but he opens up. And my speed was going to be a big factor in that fight. And I think that's what... how it panned out, and also it being for me it was a crossroads fight. But yeah, the Richard Riakporhe fight for me was I still don't, it's not a loss.
I was just about to say that
on my record it could be a loss, but then I think when I always try and look at things sort of from a hindsight point of view before it can be hindsight. So at the end of my career, that'll be a pivotal fight in my progression. So yeah, it's not a, it's all it is a one in the losses column for now, and and then that's all it is. Very few fighters go unbeaten. I mean, Barry McGuigan lost to Peter Eubank apparently early on, and then stopped him in the return, which is what I plan on doing later down the line with Richard. Hopefully for a world title we can both get there. That'd be great. But it was a like you said, a pivotal fight, pivotal point in my career.
I was just about to kind of to ask if it felt like a loss, because I remember being with you after the fight and we watched Pacquiao Thurman after the fight, which
about 7 hours later.
That seems like a long time ago, and you couldn't sleep because of the adrenaline, and I was wired up on coffee as usual. Only coffee, by the way. But I remember watching that with you, and I remember kind of, I don't know what you kind of expect with a fighter who's just taken their first loss, but I remember how happy you were performing, and actually, admittedly, you know that you could have performed better and got the win or what have you. But I remember you showing me, I think it was Paddy Power had put out that tweet about.
I think it's Bet365.
Bet365, Paddy Power. It wasn't Betfred, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, a rival gambling company put up a tweet about, what was it?
It was a picture of a cement mixer emptying cement, and it said live pictures of Chris Billam-Smith's chin, which.
That must have been admittedly on the back of a loss, and probably better things to be praised about than being able to take a good punch. But I bet that was a nice feeling.
Yeah, it was quite funny. Like, I had another one, some random, either on Facebook or on Twitter, put a picture of a London bus that crashed into a tree or something. Like, it was like, said, this bus has just crashed into Chris Billam-Smith's chin, and that really got me. It really made me laugh, because I didn't think I took that many. Before I hadn't watched the fight back that night, so I was like, I didn't think I took that many big shots. Apart from there was one uppercut that I think Sky Sports put on there, like in between rounds, and yeah, it was a great shot by Richard. I'd made a mistake and fallen in, and he punished me for it. But yeah, like, I didn't feel I wasn't hurt in the fight at all or anything like that. So whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. You wanna know when you're getting hit. I'm sure you look at the likes of Floyd Mayweather, didn't get hit very often, and kept it that way. So yeah, that's something definitely I need to work on. But yeah, it was a strange experience because I've always been the same. Like, I'd rather, in the amateurs, I would rather have lost and performed than obviously not early on in the championships, because then there's so much more you can improve. But I felt in the Jack Massey final in 2013, everyone there had me winning that fight, and I'd performed pretty well, and somehow we got a decision. I remember a bloke who was sat next to a judge. I got out the ring, walked down my steps, walked around the corner to get a certificate, whatever. And this bloke grabbed my arm and goes, "You are absolutely robbed there, mate." And I was like, "Cheers, mate." Like, it means nothing now. It would have been great to win it, but then who knows where I would have been if I got those victories and got decisions. And in a subjective sport like boxing, you can't get affected too much by decisions if you feel you've got a base, especially early on in the amateurs and stuff like that. You've got to base your mindset on the performances, because that's what's going to get you up the levels and stuff like that. So for me, I was pleased with my performance after watching it back and looking at how I've developed since. Now I'm like, it's almost hard to watch. But that's life, and that's boxing. You can't be too, you can't take the losses, too much. You can't let them get to you. Can't let them get to your head and dishearten you too much or anything like that. Just look at them for what they are and try and look at everything on the surface. And that's what I sort of did with that fight. And thankfully I got a great opportunity after to prove where I was at.
Where did he compare to your Lawrence Okolis, Daniel Dubois, other guys that you've sparred? Obviously you've not fought either of those guys. It's different on fight night. But where did Richard's punching power match up with other guys you've been in the ring with?
Yeah, I've probably been hurt more in like earlier fights by, I think I boxed this guy.
Was that the infamous bout that you had in the phone box in?
Oh yeah, that was a war. 16-foot ring. He was like 6-2. His record was, but he was like Michael Plezhnik, his name was. But he was a Czech guy. I think he was Czech, and he was tough. And we went 8 rounds, and we absolutely had it. There was so many knockdowns. Ryan was there actually. Ryan Elliott was there. I think he was there for that one. And yeah, and it was just like there were so many shots that could have been scored, knockdowns. I wasn't getting given them. I was getting really frustrated. End up winning like 80-72, but it should have been like 80-69 because he was like, I was hitting him with shots and he'd like fall on me and then drop to his knees. And there's a picture of me on the ropes like this and him hugging me and like on his knees. And I'm just like looking at the ref like, come on, like please give me something. Like, but yeah, no, he could hit, he could punch, he caught me with a few good shots. But yeah, like I don't know whether it's because I don't know what it was. Maybe the adrenaline was high, but no one out there has really buzzed me. No one's really hurt me. I think Lawrence punches harder. Lawrence is landing some really good shots on me in sparring and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I sort of show that in the fight as well. I never looked hurt. Throughout the fight, it was times where I was tucking up, and because he comes in quite wide, he's obviously heavy-handed. It's not like I don't respect his power, as you got to respect everyone's power in the cruiserweight division. But yeah, it was just I didn't notice it. Nothing in there told me that I can't, or frighten me or scare me about taking a shot. It was just it was what it was.
It certainly was. Right, before I let you go, you've rambled on enough, Mr. Podcast host over here. The perfect athlete, Chris Billam-Smith. I still can't believe I'm not going to get on for that basketball shot, but anyway. Before I let you go, always like to talk about sunny old Bournemouth. We've mentioned it numerous occasions over the years about you taking a show there. That's a very real possibility now. Certainly there's Bournemouth. There's also fighters from neighbouring Portsmouth and Southampton who are doing very well. Michael McKinson just signed with Matchroom on the back of a good win against Chris Congo. Must be great though to have such a great support behind you, because every time you're building up to a fight, or even just kind of put out any news, or we put out a clip of you on social media, you do have a very big fan base down there who really love to watch you box and support you on. That must mean the world to you.
Yeah, it's still crazy. I still get people now, like when a few people stop me and ask for a picture or just congratulate me on my win. It's mad. It's mad to think that you could just walk through your hometown centre where you used to hang around as a kid, and then people now congratulate you for what you're doing. So it's nice, and I think the fan base down there and the town, it loves its sport. Like you've got the football fans. Obviously the football team doing well again now, and they've done a lot of success in recent years. And the club as a whole, they backed me. I went on their podcast not just last month, so it's amazing to have that. And there's a lot of talent down there. Obviously you got Lee Cutler, who was he was at middleweight last time out. He's going down to welterweight now because that's what he always should have been. But he had to take the opportunity. But he's a real talented lad. I'm gutted he didn't get to show that against Brad Ray, but he's a talent, and there's more talent coming through, and the amateur scene's growing. The love for boxing down there is huge. We've had my mate of mine did a Mayweather event, had Mayweather there, had Fury there, had Joshua there, and he's packed out the shows for the talks with them. So yeah, it'd be great to get a show down there. Hopefully when fans are back towards the end of the year, I'd absolutely love to have a show down there. And obviously the dream is to fight at Dean Court at the stadium, and it's mad that's even a possibility in the pipeline. Obviously, my brand needs building and everything like that. It's a business at the end of the day, but it's it's crazy. That would just be the ultimate dream for me, just to fight at the stadium where I used to watch the football as a 12-13-year-old kid. And to be on the pitch, fighting on the pitch, and having all the fans there for me would be just an absolute honour. I got goosebumps just thinking about it.
And then afterwards, go for a chicken and blues.
Obviously, go for a chicken and blues. Shout out chicken and blues.
Been promising me a chicken and blues for years, mate.
Well, unfortunately, they haven't got one in Bedford.
Maybe they can expand.
Yeah.
Now we're giving them the plug on the Boxing Social podcast. Who knows?
Well, next time you're down in Bournemouth, mate, I've promised you when you're down there. Ryan's had a chicken and blues. Must have had a chicken and blues. Ryan's had a chicken and blues.
I'm sure he has.
Do you know what I mean? That's because he didn't just jump on when I won a Commonwealth title. You know, he was
Listen,
there from
you're
the
lucky.
start.
You're lucky to get in here. You haven't even won a British title. But Chris Billam-Smith, thank you very much for popping down, or popping up from Bournemouth and appearing on the Boxing Social podcast. Always a pleasure to catch up. Hopefully, go get some food now if there's any places that are open in London. But yeah, thanks very much, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
No, thanks for having me, mate. As always, my pleasure.
Done.
Sweet.
Well done. Oh.